Hi, welcome to this CodeRage session focused on Windows 10 and specifically on the WinRT support and the support for the Windows desktop bridge. I'm Marco Cantu, Product Manager for Delphi at Embarcadero, and you might also know me for the Delphi books that I've written in the past. This is my contact information, my email, Twitter account, and blog URL. So the focus of this session is Windows 10. Its APIs, the Universal Windows Platform concept. We're going to go a bit through some of the foundations, focused on new VCL controls using WinRT APIs and using the Windows desktop bridge specifically. Before we get started, let me reiterate one key concept, that VCL is the best native library for Windows desktop. There's really no contest there compared to what's available in the Microsoft camp or in other libraries and development tools. Windows 10 is a very fast-growing version of Windows. It is getting extremely popular, but Windows 7 still has a high business adoption, so a development strategy needs to encompass both Windows 10 and Windows 7. Now, Windows 10 includes three core APIs: the classic Windows API, the WinRT API, and the .NET Framework layer. The WinRT API is new in Windows 10. Well, actually was introduced in Windows 8, but it was not in Windows 7. Now there's also a concept, a Universal Windows Platform. That's a first-class Windows 10 application. The UWP acronym is generally reserved for WinRT apps, but using one of the bridges, you can use a different /older technology to create a Universal Windows Platform application that can be hosted on the store or deployed through a specific mechanism. So let's focus on the core API timeline. Win32/Win64 has been there from the beginning and is still a core element of the product. .NET was a layer on top of Win32, was originally supposed to replace Win32 as a core foundation, but then never happened. And if we look at the VCL and its core runtime library support, that's a foundation that's on top of WinRT. On top of Win32, but it can also now interact with WinRT. VCL is really a great object-oriented library that encapsulates the Win API. It really excels and exceeds the features that Microsoft has with MFC. On .NET side, there's WinForms, that again an OOP library encapsulation of the Win API, but is more limited compared to the VCL. Also, VCL has a very deep and smooth COM integration. So it's not just a great Win API integration, but also a great COM integration, both client and COM server integration. And now, additionally, over the last couple of years, VCL has added first-class support for the WinRT API. So you can have a Win32 application or Win64 application that calls natively and directly to the WinRT API code. So let's focus on VCL and Windows 10. We added styling, we added new VCL controls, a lot of them in 10 Seattle, and a new one was actually just released in Berlin Update 2. The key concept here is that these controls are implemented in the VCL, and so they work also on Windows 7. They look like the WinRT controls counterparts, but there's no WinRT dependencies, so there's no need to use Windows 10 to run them. As we will see later, we do have WinRT specific components, and those require Windows 10. So this new set of new VCL controls, there is RelativePanel, ToggleSwitch, SearchBox, SplitView, and Activity Indicator that were all introduced in 10 Seattle. Now there's a calendar view and a calendar picker that have been added in update 2. And I demonstrated them in my Delphi product address 2 days ago. So I'm just going to touch shortly on them. This is the overview of the controls introduced in 10 Seattle. ToggleSwitch, RelativePanel, again, activity indicator, which is kind of an hourglass. Specific SearchBox, SplitView, which is a great control to define the relationship and the layout of a form. RelativePanel is also quite intriguing because you can determine the position of controls relative to another rather than just with absolute or global values. We have also introduced several Windows 10 styles, and we have augmented them in update 2 with 3 more styles. Styling an application allows you to take an existing app, in this case just using dbGrid and standard controls, and making it look clearly way more modern than the original application was without doing any significant rewrite to the code. Again, this is the new calendar control that I can show you in action shortly. Although I demonstrated it already in my other session, it's worth having a new look. This is the calendar control in action, and I'm also going to add another one, which is the calendar picker. It's similar, but not the same exact control. In this application, again, which I showcased yesterday, there's also some custom painting code attached to the control so that the first day of the week is painted in red. So beside this red painting, this is the standard control. You can navigate in the calendar. You can pick a date, or you can even enable multiple selection if you want. You can click on the month to zoom into the year view, or you can click on the year to switch to the decade view. And then you can drill down to the specific date. You can also select a date with this control. You can the date displayed here, and then the calendar pops up for the selection. Now let's focus on one of the key concept of this session, which is the Windows runtime. Windows runtime is an object-oriented API with asynchronous calls. You can be blocking if the operation takes more than 50 milliseconds. It's technically COM-based, meaning it has the same virtual method tables of COM, but it uses a different type system. There's no type library. There are different data types. Strings and other types are different, and also the object construction, the object lifetime, the lifetime management of the objects is significantly different from the traditional COM reference counted model. Now notice this is not a .NET API, it's not managed code, it's native code. So when you're calling WinRT from a Delphi or C++ builder application, you are making a direct native to native code. If you're calling WinRT from a .NET application, you have to go through the marshalling layer. Delphi provides helpers to ease the creation of objects, and over 40 new WinAPI units with all of the interfaces for the WinRT APIs. There's also a new T-window string type, matching the native H-string type used by WinRT. And notice that coding directly for the WinRT APIs require much less code compared to using C# or Visual C++. So the integration is smoother and easier compared to the Microsoft solutions. This is the list of the API units that are available in the source RTL WinRT folder. Plus, there are these helper classes, helper units that, for example, T-window string, defined in the system WinRT unit. There are many classes that use a factory to access constructors. I get you to some bit of code just to get a feeling of how this works. We also have a couple of higher level components, and I'm going to use one of them and then drill into the code. Sharing contracts and notifications. The other feature that we support through WinRT is Bluetooth LE. So these components make it possible to create applications rapidly, and also for the notifications and Bluetooth, these are also cross-platform components that you can use in a FireMonkey application for desktop and mobile. So let's look into the code. So this is the notification application that we ship as part of the product and uses the notification center, which is a cross-platform component. If we run it, we can see that the application will show the notification here and also react to the notification with feedback. Now, I don't care that much about what the application actually does, but my focus is how it is done. So if we go to the show notification, we're using a high-level present notification object, again, completely cross-platform. When we do the present notification, this reverts back to the platform support. So this falls back to the system Win notification implementation of the notification center for WinRT. What happens here is that this is higher level code that uses the low level support for WinRT APIs. I know toast notification is a WinRT API, and this is how it's declared. There are parameters, there are values. Notice also how this is decorated with a class name. The class name is important because the class name is what you need to use to create an object that implements the API at the operating system level. So this is an attribute that is associated with the class, and also there is the interface itself. So what happens is that we're using this factory for creating the toast notification. So this toast notification is just an instance that uses a generic import tied to the interface. Rather than rewriting a specific import classes for each and every implementations for the WinRT APIs, there is this generic mechanism that simplifies and reduces the code significantly. This initialization is just goes through the factory to ask the operating system to actually do the creation of the object on our behalf. And then if we go back to the Win notification, there is some data that's passed. Here is how you add event handlers or delegates for the different operations. And finally, there is a show call that, again, is just the call into the WinRT API. You call the notifier passing a notification object, so which is a second interface. I know this takes quite a bit to digest and fully understand, but this is kind of the key concept and one good example to get started into exploring the WinRT support. That's part of the product. So let's focus on the last area of this presentation, which is the Windows Desktop Bridge. The bridge allows you to package a Win32, Win64 application into an APPX. The APPX can be installed directly on Windows with Windows 10 with Anniversary Update if it is code signed or the signature has been installed in the target version, instance of the OS, or the APPX, although it has to be created with a few different parameters can be distributed through the Windows Store. The APPX technology is just a single zip file with the entire file distribution, folders, subfolders, mapped to virtual subsystems. It's a one-click install and one-click uninstall, so it's extremely simple to operate on these files with an experience that's extremely similar to the one you have on the Windows Store, on the mobile platform stores for iOS and Android. The Windows Desktop Bridge does file system and registry virtualization, meaning you are limited in your access to file system and registry, basically to the application subfolder plus some shared folders like user documents. There are different ways for building an APPX. One is using installers and other high-level tools. Another is the manual approach, which goes through calling make APPX and then doing the code signing. This is what is leveraged by the RStudio IDE, starting with Berlin Update 2, when you target the application store with your application. So let me actually go through the steps and show you how you can build an application, build an APPX out of an existing Windows application. So let me show you the entire and complete process for creating an APPX with RStudio 10 Berlin Update 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is to do some initial configuration. And so I'm going to go to the project tools options and go to the SDK manager and add SDK for 32-bit Windows. And I'm going to add a new SDK to the system. This is the default location where a Windows kit is installed, but on my system I have it on drive D. Now the system automatically finds the 4 applications that the IDE will need to refer to. So these are in the standard location that they were found, and that's all you have to do to add the SDK. The other thing, and I'm going to do that again in the tools options, although you can customize it at the single application level, is to create a provisioning profile for Windows, and I'm going to pick 32-bit Windows and Application Store, and I'm going to create a new self-signed certificate. For this, I need to pick a folder. Let's save it on the desktop for simplicity. And I'm going to call this marco.pfx, which is the extension for the certificate. The subject, I can customize it, but let's go for it. I'm going to type a password for the certificate, and the IDE will ask Windows to create the certificate on my behalf. Now we have a certificate, and the IDE can see the certificate and read into the data, and so you can check that the file is correct and the password is also appropriate. So with these steps done, let's create a new VCL application. It's going to be a very simple application. I'm going to add a button to it, and in the button, which is called button 1, let's skip for it. I'm going to use the hello caption. I'm using the new quick edits for that. And in the event handler, I'm just going to do show message hello Centennial, that I've of course mistyped. Okay, so let's run and compile our application. It works fine, great, no surprise here. But then we're going to move to picking a different configuration, which is application store deployment. So now let me revise the features of this application for the store. Some of it is the appearance section, the application section, and the version info are part of the application. What I'm going to do actually is pick Windows 10 look and feel for the app. I'm going to do the Windows 10 green, pick that as a default style. Let me actually check that the application works fine with the new style. It looks great, so let's go for it. The other thing I need to do is to check my deployment information. The application, this is the deployment for the standard application, but I actually need to switch to the store app and reopen the deployment window. For the store application, we have the two PNG files. We have the executable itself, and we have an application manifest that you could potentially customize for the application. Let me save the application in a new folder, Centennial test, and save it as unit 1 and project 9. So now I do my deployment operation, and now we can actually open the Explorer folder, and here we can see that there was a manifest template, so the skeleton of the manifest file. Let's actually open it in the IDE. So this is the skeleton of the manifest file for Windows Desktop Bridge app, our Centennial app, and some of the values are actually replaced in the IDE with information that comes from the version info or some of the other configuration settings. So you generally don't have to touch it, but if needed, you can customize the manifest template or the final manifest that's embedded into the application. Of course, as the result of deploying this application, if we go back here, we get a Win32 folder, debug, and also this is the final manifest that was used. Notice in the project under the project, we find the APPX file. This is the package of the application that has been generated by the IDE. Now this application is signed with a local code signing certificate, so if you try to install it, you get an error message that the certificate is not trusted. So there are two ways around it. One is to buy a full code signing certificate. That's going to cost a little money. The second option you have is actually to take the certificate that you created, or the same operation that can actually be done starting with the certificate embedded in the APPX file. It's a very similar operation. Install it on the local machine. Pick the certificate. In this case, provide the password. If you're starting with the APPX, you don't need to provide the password. And then you need to place the certificate in a store, which is the Trusted People store. If you do this operation, then the certificate will be known to the system, and now you can reopen the APPX file, do the install operation, and the install will succeed. This means that the application can be executed from this APPX installation window, but it will show up in the start menu, installed in the start menu as project 9. These are new app. In all practical terms, and of course we can execute it from here. In all practical terms, the application is stored in a special location of the operating system that's under Program Files, there is a Windows apps subfolder that's generally protected, where you get all of the WinRT applications, including our project 9 for this specific ID and version number. So when you're creating a new version number, you can redeploy the application. If you just rebuild it and redeploy it without changing the version number, then as you try to open it and install it once more, you'll get an error that there is already an existing application with the same signature and the same version number that is available. So one option you have is to go uninstalling the application. We can open the apps and features section that has the WinRT apps, and we should be able to find our project 9 and uninstall it and remove it completely from the system. And now if we go back to the Windows app folder, we can see that project 9 is not there anymore. And at this point, we can install a new version. In general, and for store apps, every new version will have a new version ID. And so applications with different version ID stored side by side in the Windows apps folder. For actual store deployment, there is one further step that you need to do, and that is in the project options. Rather than picking the provisioning related with ad hoc, is actually use store and provide the information that Microsoft will give you once you created a package name, once you created an account, and the account is a paid account, and you created a package name, Microsoft will provide you with the specific information that is needed. So on one side, you have to create a store account and a register package name and fill that information. But on the other hand, you need to use a specific page on the Microsoft website to ask for the permission to publish an application to the store. Because right now, if you try to publish on the store with a standard account, you get an error that your developer account doesn't have permission to submit apps converted with the desktop app converter. So besides creating the store account, you also need to visit a specific page on the Microsoft website that I mentioned in my blog last week. And the specific page asking for the permission is this campaign desktop bridge location. So this is the page where you can fill information about your app to get permission to upload desktop bridge application to the store at this point in time. As I mentioned, there is one app on the store that's written in Delphi. That's an app I wrote. And let me show you how you can get it and download it. You need to open the store application and look for it. And at this point, you can install. It says you own this product because I already installed it in the past, but I removed it. It will do the download, and the behavior is exactly what you expect in the mobile world. When downloading and installing application is extremely straightforward and extremely simple. The application has been downloaded and installed, so I can click play, and it starts up almost immediately. So now I can get my new figure and add it to my collection of figures in the app. The app is not particularly interesting, but the point is it can be published, it can be deployed from the store today, and that's a Windows 64-bit FireMonkey application. We have provided, as I showed, the full steps, the full capability of doing Centennial deployment in the store, to a local APPX or to a store APPX in update 2 of 10.1 Berlin. Now, there's one final thing I wanted to mention. Microsoft is started by promoting the bridge as a way to migrate and make your applications available as universal Windows platform apps and in the store. Then they changed their focus slightly, indicating that this is a bridge for migration. So eventually you should move the application fully to WinRT. And as a migration step, they encourage creating APPX with 2 applications, the Win32 app and a WinRT app that uses that leverage the native features of WinRT, and then use socket communications between the two. Given that Win32 application can access a lot of the WinRT APIs, this seems really not based on technical grounds. So again, in update 2, we have full ID integrated support for store deployment, APPX generation, or ad hoc, or the final package that you need for uploading on the store. Microsoft is making Win32 and Win64 applications first class again on Windows 10, even enabling them for store deployment. And VCL remains the best Windows client UI library. So overall, RAD Studio provides astonishing solution for Windows 10 client support across all of the APIs, the traditional Windows API, the COM layer, and WinRT, and with the ability to build applications that are store enabled. Thanks, and let me know if you have any questions directly here at CodeRage or over email if you are watching the recording.
So I think this is a huge step forward, and it's exciting to see that Microsoft is returning the mantle, as you will, to the native app and saying the native app is now first class, full access to all the APIs on Windows, the Windows platform again.
Yeah, and the fact that WinRT is a native platform, more similar to COM than to .NET, is a very significant change that happened over the last couple of years. Before that, Microsoft was insisting that .NET was the future of the core of Windows, and that really never happened. I mean, .NET remains an extremely important library, but the core of Windows is made of Win32, COM, and WinRT, which are all native bindings.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, it's actually kind of interesting because over the years, really everything else that's focused on native Windows development has kind of gone away. And so we've continued to improve Delphi and C++ Builder, the VCL, and now FireMonkey. And realistically, there really isn't anything else that's focused on building native Windows apps. And so not only has Delphi improved its already standing as the best, but there's not really any other choices out there. So it's great to see that it's now fully embraced by Windows 10. What OSs will this give my application access to? Just Microsoft, and why is it called UWP?
It's called UWP by Microsoft, and this choice of picking the name Universal by Microsoft and Apple is really kind of a misnomer. So Apple has these universal apps that runs on iOS only, but they run on 64-bit and 32-bit. Actually, they embed the two binaries in a single IPA file, which is kind of crazy. But they're called universal iOS apps. This universal Windows apps runs on one operating system, which is Windows. So nothing to do with Xamarin or some of those initiatives that are really more universal, like FireMonkey is. This is just having the same binary that can run, well, not even the same binary, having the same application that can target phone and desktop Windows, plus Xbox or, well, in the future, HoloLens. But really, if you think about business apps, none of the other platforms, say for Windows desktop, is really relevant today. I mean, the ARM tablets with Windows have long gone. The Windows phones are really disappearing very fast. And so what's left is Xbox, but unless you're in games, that's not really relevant. And well, HoloLens for the future, we'll see if that takes up and becomes a viable platform. But again, it's not going to be I mean, you're not going to run your business management applications, your ERP, this type of business apps on a phone, actually, or even less on an Xbox. So, but again, that's mostly a marketing term. Microsoft has started touting those as the modern apps, but then realizing then they were cutting out 99% of the existing Windows apps, and the developers were not interested in porting to this platform, because that's been the platform since Windows 8, and there's been very, very little development in that space. So they decided to open it up to allow application with other technologies, and there was the Astoria bridge that they killed. There was this other bridge for building Objective-C applications for Windows Phone. Again, this is a universal Windows app that doesn't run on Windows Desktop. So it's another like very peculiar scenario.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, Microsoft calling it universal and Apple calling theirs universal. It shows that they have a very narrow view of what universal is. And, you know, really what we...
Absolutely. I mean, we can claim that FireMonkey apps are universal, way more than...
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Centennial applications, can they be written in only VCL, or can FireMonkey applications also be run on the desktop bridge?
No, there is absolutely no limitation on the technology you use. In fact, my minifigure app is a FireMonkey 64-bit application. I mean, I started submitting another app to the Microsoft Store, and then they kept, and it was like, I think it was my RSS feed. It's a demo that we've made available on our platform. It's a very simple single list view with the feeds from Delphi feeds. But they started complaining because that was not a real application. It hasn't got a website. There is no marketing around it. And say, oh, yeah, sure, it's just a demo. I want to get it working. So they asked me, no, you need to submit something else. So I grabbed one application that I had that I've written for mobile, and the fact that it had a website, it had like a well-established presence on the Android store, convinced them that it was worth approving and let it go through. So that's why I picked that application. But again, that's a FireMonkey application, but VCL will equally work. I mean, it's really completely neutral. I mean, the only rules are that application cannot do elevation, so it cannot, if it can run only as a user, not as an admin. But most of our application do actually, even Rust Studio runs as a user level and not as an admin level. So there might be specific needs, but in general, I mean, a user app is fine. You cannot create device drivers. You cannot do low-level kernel integration. Fine, that makes sense. That would be a little too dangerous. But other than that, I mean, any Windows app will work. I mean, probably one written in Delphi 2 or some other older, very old tools.
Gregory's saying that they have a build server and it has code signing certificate on it. Can they use that build server to do the signing of an APPX as part of a batch process, a build process?
Yeah, I think it can be done. Now, we do have the operations as part of the MS build scripts. Now, the operations we are doing are not magical. We're just leveraging and calling services of the Windows 10, of the latest Windows 10 SDK, because there are 3 Windows 10 SDKs. If you use the first one, these features are not available, which is a bit confusing, but whatever. They're all called Windows 10 SDK. So if you use the latest Windows 10 SDK, you have the core utilities. So you could, I mean, invoke those core utilities manually outside of our IDE and capabilities. This is fairly well documented by macro is pretty time consuming. Like a feature I haven't shown is that if you're using runtime packages are automatically deployed, added part of the deployment, and you have them there without having to list which runtime packages I'm actually invoking and using in my app. So we are making it easy in the IDE, but technically you can do the same steps with a manual script. And the code signing is the standard Windows code signing, so there's no magic in the code signing. Speaking of which, I thought there was a question. I mean, what code signing is required for the store? Surprisingly enough, there's no code signing for the store. That sounds odd because you generally need to code sign Android and iOS applications with your certificate, which is kind of a weak certificate. But in case of Microsoft, you need to submit the application without code signing. So we had kind of last minute change our scripts. So if you're using the options in the second part, the store options, there is no code signing. If you're using ad hoc, the items in the items in the first part of that provisioning window, then we'll go through the code signing because that's needed to install locally.
Are there restrictions on what you can do as far as accessing databases or accessing network data from an APPX?
No, network access seems to be pretty open. You can access a document folder, you can access other location. I don't think there's any restriction in terms of running network clients. I actually think there's also no restriction on running network servers, but I haven't tried. So, I mean, the minifigures app is a client. Well, it's just an HTTP client. But no, I'm expecting things to be fairly open. Now, if you are deploying a local engine, like a local interface, Firebird, MySQL, then you, SQLite, then you can embed the DLS with your APPX, like you do on mobile and other platforms. But if the server is like a network server that you reach with a standard TCP IP connection, I'm expecting this to be working smoothly with no issue.
Yeah. So if your installation process is like instantiating hey, we're going to launch the interbase installer like Delphi installer does, or launch some other type of database installer, then that would be an issue because that installer would not be running inside the APPX.
Yeah, you cannot run another installer because you can run only applications at the user level. So installing is not an option. Yep. Technically, you can have multiple executables in an APPX. That's a feature that actually Microsoft suggests for their migration, kind of crazy migration strategy. But technically, you can have multiple applications inside an APPX. However, Microsoft is extremely worried about that because that is seen as a way to distribute Trojans or illegal application within the main one. So you could like take an open source or popular project, distribute it, and distribute something else alongside. This is technically, and the first can start the second. This is technically possible because they're just Windows executables in a folder. So they can run, I mean, one can run the other at the user level. However, before you can submit to the store, they make you sign a specific license that includes the fact that you're not going to install anything else but modules that are specific to the application. If you do so, they will fine you. So ask you money, which is weird, but whatever. So rather than suspending the app from the store, you'll have to pay for the store usage.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's quite big. I mean, honestly, I mean, when I saw the document, I was like, I mean, I would not sign this, but I did because I wanted to get the app there as a test. But it's weird. Although they told me, well, we don't even think it's enforceable. I mean, asking, I mean, they're like $15 a download or something like that. It's like, what the heck? It is really a weird model. But whatever. I mean, that's the legal side. I mean, just let's focus on the technical part.
Sure. So Stephen's saying that devil's advocate. He says he seems like Microsoft sees Centennial as a temporary solution, helping move developers away from Win32 and not invest in Win32. Now you kind of touched on that at the end there, but maybe you might want to elaborate on what you were saying.
Yeah, it is partially true. It is partially true that Microsoft sees Centennial as a temporary solution. My expectation this will be a very long-term temporary solution. I mean, the companies that are using this, the first few, I mean, the bridge has, I don't know, last time I checked, there were like at least a couple of dozen, if not 3 dozen applications. I mean, very visible, very popular on there. I mean, Adobe is distributing through the bridge. I'm pretty sure Adobe has no plan to migrate all the applications away from Win32 and rewrite them in WinRT. The same is Evernote. Evernote has been a champion since Microsoft opened the bridge, one of the first few ones. I really don't think that Evernote developers are looking forward to rebuild their app in WinRT. They want their applications to be distributable through the store. So the way I see it in Microsoft, there are 2 camps. There's one camp that sees the bridge as a temporary solution, and they want everyone to adopt the WinRT development model. And that's the camp that's more focused on dev tools and strategies. There is another camp that's focused on getting the store working and getting today's Windows platform as a great platform again, and where one can safely install application without having their system trashed. I mean, user-friendly and user-safe. This camp doesn't care what you write, how you write it. They care about getting apps there. And they hire specific people with the focus of getting applications on the store without even asking how they're built. Actually, one of these people, and Microsoft personally asked me to get all of the information I could share with about RAS Studio supporting this model, because they would love to have all of RAS Studio developers. So, I mean, as publishing apps on the store. So there is a conflict in Microsoft, the same conflict that brought them to kill the Astoria bridge that was technically working. But I don't see this going away rapidly. I mean, within a few years, maybe in 20 years, yeah, they will decide to move off. But it's not in a short term.
Yeah, I think that I've heard that. Actually read some articles before about Microsoft, the internal conflicts that they have between the different divisions. If you think about it from the Windows OS point of view, they want to have, like you're saying, the good user experience with good selection of apps in the store. But then maybe the Visual Studio division is like, no, everybody needs to be using, flavor of the month of development tools that we've just pushed out. And so, yeah, they would like to see, that people are using the Visual Studio and the whatever, Windows C# and Windows WinRT and all that stuff. But the OS is so. I was reading an article that said actually that that you can see a shift between which divisions in power shows through what the current release is, and that Windows 10 shows that the OS is now kind of back in charge of that division of power, because we see finally a good focused OS that's focused on being a good OS and not focused on trying to promote the other divisions. So anyway, I agree with you. I think
notice also that I don't know if I mentioned it in this session, because I've given a few on the same topic, but there is also corollary to the store distribution, which is enterprise distribution. So the same core technologies beside the APPX and DES model are available for an enterprise who want to distribute and track, like installation, distribution, internally in a company. So that lots of enterprise companies are giving less and less power to end users to install applications on their systems, because IT guys fear that they will mess up, catch viruses, and that does happen. So one of the idea is to leverage the same model for internal enterprise application distribution. That can be done manually by deploying APPX, but they're really, stepping it up as with a full distribution model. So this is also quite relevant, because Enterprise application distribution has also been fairly weak in complex areas, and the APPX model with the bridge can really make it possible to take a lot of existing internal business apps and distribute within the company through this model. Again, the advantage is it makes it very simple to install, uninstall applications, very smooth. When you install, everything goes away. Well, of course, save for the file saved in the documents folder. But it's really a game changer for the Windows platform. And they tried it on Windows 8, but the fact it was WinRT only failed, and failed quite badly. Now with Windows 10, which is getting better adoption and has a more open store, Microsoft is having a second chance to get it right. And the last thing, again, that I didn't mention is you can sell apps on the store. I mean, it's the first time you have a way to sell Windows application and charge whatever you want to charge by giving a portion of the money to Microsoft. I mean, today, the distribution in terms of selling apps for Windows is fragmented, is complex, is up to the actual application publisher. Having a model to sell apps can be a game changer. I don't think we're there yet, but can really change things significantly.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Question here about the notifications you're doing. What component were you using to show notifications?
Oh, there's a T notification manager. I don't remember the component name. Component that actually works cross-platform. So the same component. I mean, that demo is a demo we ship, and that component works on Windows, iOS, and Android. The same exact component, same exact code. It was adapted to Windows when last year when Windows 10 included notifications. And that requires a version of Windows 10. You can run that notification demo on Windows 7.
With notifications, can your Delphi app act as a target notification to get notification data from another app?
No, you can. I mean, notifications is, I think notification is single app. There is another concept, which is contracts, which is kind of like sharing on other platforms. Contracts, that application can work as contract source. I mean, source of a document for another, like source for a bitmap for another application. With the bridge, applications gain a strong ID. So in theory, an application that uses the bridge and has a strong ID should be able to act as a contract target. Now, I haven't personally tried, so don't take it for granted. But having the strong ID opens to the use of further WinRT APIs that are not available if you don't have a strong app ID. So an application installed as an APPX can do things that a standard Win32 application cannot do in terms of interaction with WinRT.
Yeah, very cool. Something to look forward to. Vladimir's asking, he says, when creating the APPX package, can you add other files of your choice like HTML help, various PDFs, etc.?
Oh, sure, absolutely. We make it easy by, if you go in the deployment window, there's the ability to add a file, and you can just add any file. I mean, there's no limit what you can add. Again, even another executable, you can add a DLL, you can add a Delphi package, whatever. So you can add and distribute any file in that package.
Okay. It looks like we've gotten through this session, all the questions. Thank you so much, Marco. Lots of great information there.
Thanks. And feel free to reach me or email if you need any further information about the bridge. That's something I've been delving into for the last few months.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.